Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for this video, I'll be discussing my May wrap-up, all of the books that I read and attempted to read in the month of May. And overall, May, I will admit, it's not the end of May yet. I'm filming this on, was it May 29th? So there's still a few days left. I could finish a few more books, but for right now, I'm just going to get my thoughts and feelings on all these books while they're kind of still fresh in my mind. May was kind of an up and down month yet again, but I did find some great books, some books that are not for me, kind of all over the place. It's kind of hard to compare because April was such a great reading month. I'll link down below my April wrap-up if you haven't checked that out yet, but man, April, not only the number of books, but also just the amount of 5 stars and 4.5 stars I found. So May probably was never going to live up to that, but May was decent. It was a good reading month. You're probably like, just get to the books, Jake. But yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I think I'm going to start with my one pesky DNF that I had and kind of work my way up to my favorite books of the month. The one DNF that I had, pretty disappointing, was The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. And this book was fairly disappointing because I'd heard pretty great things about this horror novel. And for me, I didn't really even... maybe I should have gave it more of a shot, but I got like... I don't know, maybe like 80 pages in. Did I write it down? Yeah, I got like 80 pages in, and it really didn't hook me in. I didn't really love the writing or the characters. So one of my least favorite things about this book that was very distracting is that the author used a lot of Mexican language in here, like full-on sentences, and didn't really give any context about what those sentences could mean. And as someone who doesn't speak a second language, it was very distracting, and it just felt like I couldn't really get a full grasp on what was happening, because sometimes like something intense would happen and then you'd get that and you're just like, well, what's going on? So I didn't really love the writing. There wasn't really much that I liked about this at all, really. So I quickly DNF'd it. I'll usually give a book, like 100 pages or so, but I can just kind of tell this book wasn't going to be for me. And looking at a bunch of Goodreads reviews, kind of the similar complaints I was having, so I decided to go ahead and DNF this book. Luckily for me, in the month of May, I did not have any kind of like 2 or 2.5 star reads, but I did have a fair share of 3 and 3.5 stars, including my Patreon pick for the month, which was picked by Mummy to a Rockstar. The book that they wanted me to read was Dragons of Autumn Twilight by Margaret Weiss. And I think there's a second author, but like they're kind of an author duo. And this is the first book in kind of this epic fantasy series that started in like the mid-80s. Oh, God. And you can definitely tell that this is, very classic fantasy, like very classic fantasy tropes and stories and just so much classic fantasy-ness. Like, part of me enjoyed it because of how cozy it felt. Like, definitely a lot of the story beats and the characters felt very similar. Maybe not in like a rip-off-ish kind of way, but it just felt very comfortable. But also, one of the reasons I gave it 3 stars and that I didn't really love it is that it definitely feels a bit dated. Like, it's classic for a reason because it's very old and just while it was cozy, it felt very unremarkable and just like I had read this before. Like, nothing was really like stand out for me. And especially considering that I've read so much newer fantasy that just really blows me away at times of just how crazy and epic it can be. Like, this kind of story, probably people who read it in the 80s had a great time with it. But me reading it after I've already read such newer, grittier fantasy like this, it just doesn't hold up. So I did not love this book, but it was fine. I gave it 3 stars. Another book that was kind of a disappointment was We Kept Her in the Cellar by W.R. Corman. And this is actually a book that Ian specifically picked for me in our challenge that me and Stacy are doing, where Ian picks 3 books for each of us, and just we're going to see how we like them. One of the books that Ian picked was Boys in the Valley, which was 5 stars. But this book I did not love. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It has a very cool premise where essentially it's a Cinderella retelling, but obviously it's a horror novel if you couldn't tell from the cover. And it gets very weird. It gets very graphic and gory. But I did have a lot of complaints. And the more I was talking with Ian about it, the more, or like the less I like the story. Because I love the concept. The concept is very cool. But the execution of it and just some like laugh out loud moments that weren't probably meant to be that, I just didn't enjoy how the story unfolded. But it wasn't bad. I did enjoy some aspects of the book, but overall, the more that I think about it, the less I enjoy it. So I'm settling on 3 stars for We Kept Her in the Cellar. So this next book I also gave 3 stars, and wasn't really necessarily like a big disappointment because I went into the book with very low expectations. And that would actually be Never Flinch by Stephen King, which I'm not going to talk about a lot in depth here because I do have a dedicated book review for it, which was published last Friday. So definitely check that out if you want to get more in-depth feelings or of how I felt about the book. But overall, 3 stars. And my kind of the word of the day for that book is unremarkable. It wasn't great and it wasn't bad. It was just kind of like, why are we here? Why are we doing this again? It was the sequel to Holly, which I really did not like, and retroactively give that book 2 stars now. This book was definitely better than that. It was definitely more readable, with great pacing, as always. Well, not always. Why did I say that? Great pacing, a pretty good villain, you know. But overall, I just wish he would write more stuff than Holly. And of course, he's going to follow that up probably with Talisman 3, which y'all know how I feel about that. Arrgh. But, yeah, as far as Never Flinch goes, it's fine. And the rest of the books I have to talk about were all at least 4 and 4.5 stars. I don't think I had a 5-star new favorite. Nope, I did not have a 5-star. I almost did, but not quite. So all these books that are left are 4 and 4.5 stars. I will talk about one that I think got won by a random number generator game. I'm pretty sure. And that would be Game of Thrones prequel novel, which more specifically The Hedge Knight. If you guys don't know, obviously George R. R. Martin wrote A Song of Ice and Fire and is still writing it. But he also wrote these series of novellas that he published as The Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And the first novella in that is called The Hedge Knight. I love Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Really great. Kind of a little bit of a departure from his writing in A Song of Ice and Fire, kind of a more classic tone to it, but still really great. And it's basically, the Hedge Knight novella, but turned into a graphic novel, which really, I'm not the biggest fan of graphic novels. And I will say, unfortunately, I do love the novella quite a bit more than the graphic novel. It's essentially the same story, just, with pictures, obviously. I wouldn't really say that I loved the writing in this. The pictures are all great, which is main reason why it gets a bit of a higher rating. But weirdly, the author of this decided to do it in first person, which just feels really weird for A Song of Ice and Fire in general. But I don't know, just the writing itself felt kind of off to me. I'm pretty sure George R. R. Martin, I don't think he actually wrote the text to this. Maybe he did, but it just felt a bit off than the actual story. But the story itself, still very compelling. The drawings were all very good. So I settled on 4 stars. I don't know if I necessarily need to read the other ones. If I'm going to enjoy the story, I'm just going to read the novellas. But yeah, this one, The Hedge Knight, gets 4 stars. I also read Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. This is the second book now that I've read by him. Gave this book 4 stars. I think, yeah, it has a movie adaptation. I've never seen the movie. I don't think I was allowed to watch it when I was younger. But it was pretty good. I did enjoy Small Mercies a bit more, and I will say Mystic River kind of has a similar plot, and I'm hoping that a lot of his other books don't have the same plot. I know Shutter Island, I don't think, I mean, I've seen the movie for that, so it'll be a bit different, but yeah, Mystic River, it was pretty good, but it wasn't nearly as compelling as Small Mercies for me. The ending kind of was a bit abrupt, like the reveal of what's going on. It was fine, but yeah, Mystic River, pretty good. I'd give it 4 stars. Our Thrill, Chill, or Kill book club pick for the month of May was The Lies We Told by Camilla Way. And that rhymed. But anyway, this book was pretty good. Gave it 4 stars. Weirdly enough, this book kind of has like 2 stories going alongside each other. One of them felt very reminiscent of Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage, one of my all-time favorite books and authors. I did like that aspect of it. And then on the flip side, the other story kind of felt reminiscent of like a typical Lisa Jewell book, one of my favorite authors as well. So it was kind of a cool combo of the two. It didn't really felt like it was ripping off anybody, but I did enjoy those two kind of stories and writing styles. I think the main reason this doesn't get a higher rating is the ending felt a bit messy to me. It didn't really come together in the way that I wanted it to. But overall, I did enjoy this book, and I did enjoy the writing and the characters, and some crazy stuff happens, of course. I will be reading more by this author. I just have never really heard of anything else by her. I'll have to check her out, though. This one was pretty good. And for those of you who are unaware, we are in the middle of a Dungeon Crawler Carl read-along happening exclusively on the Bookish Drummer Discord. We already read book 1 in April, and in May we read book 2, which has a crazy title, Carl's Doomsday Scenario. So for me, this one I gave 4 stars to. I liked it slightly less than the first book, which I gave 4.5 stars to. I think that first book, I just love first books in series. If you look at a lot of my favorite fantasy series, like 90% of the time, the first book is my favorite. Like Way of Kings, Lies of Locke Lamora, Poppy War, Age of Myths, like 12 Kings and Cherkai. So like a lot of the times, like the introduction is my favorite. And that's true so far with this series. I also think the first book was just a little bit funnier than the second book. The second book still had a lot of great laugh out loud moments, but the first book for me, especially with like the constant leveling up and achievements, those parts really just had me laughing. The second book, not necessarily like a more serious tone, but it definitely kind of had a more straightforward approach, and I liked it, but the first book was a bit better. I'm hoping the third book is better than the second book. We'll see. We also started, yet again, another read-along that happened in May with the start of the Sun Eater read-along, and the first book, of course, being Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. And this book was a reread for me. I've already read the first 5 books. We're doing a read-along to lead up to the release of the 7th and final book in November on my birthday, which is fun. And the first book, the first time I read it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. Gave it 3.5 stars. Thought the pacing was a bit off, and it just kind of felt a little inconsistent at times. On a reread, I kind of feel the same way, but I enjoyed it because I kind of know like the character of Hadrian Marlowe a bit better. I know where the story is going, so I had a better time with it, and I gave it 4 stars on a reread. I do think the second and third books are much bigger improvements. I really enjoy the sequels a lot more than the first book, but it's fun to see people's reactions to the first book. I think Nico and Esme, they read it for the first time, so it was a lot of fun to get their reactions. And hopefully they and you as well will continue along with the read-along. We're reading book 2 in June, Howling Dark. But yeah, Empire of Silence, solid 4-star reread. And speaking of 4-star rereads, this one was interesting because my rating for this book actually went down a little bit. I'm, of course, talking about The Dragon's Path by Daniel Abraham, the first book in the Dagger and Coin series. It's a 5-book series, and this first book, the first time I read it was sometime last year, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Really enjoyed my time with it, but I had to reread it for, the read along that we're doing, unofficial read along, just because I had forgotten a lot about it. The second time through this one, I actually lowered my rating and gave it 4 stars. I don't know if it was because of my mood or something else, but for some reason, this book just felt a bit slower than what I remembered. I still enjoyed the characters a lot. I enjoyed the directions and developments that happened. But I'm really hoping that the second book is more exciting. Hopefully, I think just because like I already knew what was going to happen in this book, maybe I don't know how to describe it, but I gave it 4 stars and I'm hoping that the sequel is a bit better. But I still enjoyed my time with it. Great read, reread, and I gave it 4 stars. And my last 2 books for the month, they were close to getting 5 stars, especially one of them. And they were close in different ways. And I'm really trying to think of which one that I liked the most for this month, because one of the books started out fantastic and I thought the whole time it was going to be 5 stars. And then it kind of got to the ending and it really didn't stick the landing for me. So, but I still loved it. And I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. The other book kind of started out a bit slower and it kind of got better and better and better as I read forward more in the story. And then the ending is what sold it for me, but I still couldn't quite give it 5 stars. And it's really hard for me to choose a favorite, but I think for the number 2 spot, if I'm going to rank them, I'm going to go with Defending Jacob by William Landay. And this book I actually read because over on the Book of Summer Discord, I do a random number generator game, pick a random number between 1 and 100, and whoever's the closest gets to pick a book from my TBR for me to read. And actually this time we had 2 winners. One of them was Bran, and also one of them was my wife, Stacy. And the book that she's been wanting me to read for quite a while now, because she gave it 5 stars, is Defending Jacob. And while I did give this book 5 stars, I really did enjoy it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Basically, the premise is that this lawyer has a son who's been accused of murder. And the whole time you're kind of, flip-flopping back and forth. Like, did he do it? Like, oh, no, he couldn't have done it. Oh, wait, this new thing came out. Like, maybe he did do it. So the whole book, you're kind of wondering, like, what is going on? Like, did he do it? Did he not do it? And you're really wondering until the very end, like, what is going on? And really, for me, the book was a little bit slow, but I still enjoyed it. And then, like, halfway through, you're learning a lot about the case and what's going on. And by the end of it, the ending is what sold me. I really enjoyed the ending. I couldn't quite give it 5 stars just because it was a bit slow at times, and it's not a book that I would consider rereading. So I did settle on 4.5 stars. Excellent choice by my wife, Stacy. And yeah, I really did enjoy my time with it. And finally, I'll end with probably my favorite book of the month. Like I mentioned, this book I was for sure going to give 5 stars to until kind of the end of the book where the author went into some directions that I didn't love. But I still loved the book. And that would be Gothic by Philip Frykowski. And as I've mentioned, Ian has been wanting me to read this author. He made me read Boys in the Valley, which I gave 5 stars to. So I was definitely anticipating this book being excellent. What this book is about, this author, he's kind of like getting up there in age. He's almost 60 years old. He wrote some bestsellers in the past, but he's been struggling as of late until he comes across this kind of ancient looking desk that he gets for his birthday from his wife. And miraculously, he starts writing a lot, but he also may have become a violent person, perhaps. And that's kind of the story, and it kind of spirals out of control from there. But man, this author just knows how to write characters, and this author knows how to write different perspectives. Like you jump into a perspective and you know who it is, and they're very distinct. And he's very good at deciding which perspective to tell the story from. And I think that's an underrated quality for an author to have. Sometimes Stephen King does that well, other times he doesn't. But for this book, it worked out very well. And this book, I love when authors just take risks and they're just like, you know what, I'm writing whatever the hell I want to, and you can't stop me. And I love that about this book. But it does there's like a convergence of storylines where I thought something was going to happen, but it was kind of slightly anticlimactic. And then the ending, like it wasn't perfect by any means, but I still enjoyed my time immensely with this book. Philip Frykowski is definitely turning into a new favorite horror author of mine. He's written a few books and he's still pumping out some books, so I'll be reading everything this man has to offer. And yeah, this one, Gothic, not quite the 5-star treatment I thought it would be, but probably my favorite book of the month. And like I mentioned, I still have time. I still have a day and a half, or 2.5 days to read in May. So I'll insert a clip here if I end up finishing anything else. So that'll happen right now. Editing Jake here, just popping in to say that I did manage to finish one more book at the very end of May, and that would be Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Over on the Bookish Drummer Discord, I do a random number generator game, and I actually had 2 winners for the month of May. My wife Stacy had me read Defending Jacob, which I think I already talked about in the video, and then Bran was one of the winners, and he wanted me to read Norwegian Wood. Now, Haruki Murakami, one of my all-time favorite authors, but this book is a bit different than a lot of his other kind of weird, out there, magical realism kind of books. This is kind of more contemporary, and it's ironically one of his most popular books. I honestly don't understand why, though, because this is one of the horniest books I've ever read, and I really didn't enjoy it. I gave it 2.5 stars. There was one storyline, one character that I really did enjoy. And though overall the characters were fine, but really this book is just kind of a mess. And I didn't really enjoy most of it. And like I mentioned, just one of the horniest things I've ever read. So if you're looking for horny, give this book a shot. But I really didn't like it. I gave it 2.5 stars. So that was my May wrap up and all of the books that I read. And then the one, pesky DNF. It seems like every month I'm going to have at least one of them. So what can you do? But yeah, overall, not the best reading month. I did have one DNF and no 5-star reads, but I had a lot of 4 and 4.5 star reads and no 2 and 2.5 stars. So pretty good reading month. Not the best, but could have been worse, But yeah, overall takeaway, Gothic and Defending Jacob, definitely my 2 favorites of the month. I did have that one DNF, The Devil Takes You Home, just not for me. New Stephen King release, Never Flinch. I won't call it a disappointment because I didn't really expect to love it, but, not my favorite either. So yeah, May was a reading month, and hopefully June. I expect June to be a lot better. If you guys watched my June TBR, I'll link that down below. But yeah, there's so many books and new releases that I'm just super excited for. I predict quite a few 5 stars. Hopefully at least 2. That's what I'm predicting. At least 2 5-star new favorites. But we'll see. But definitely let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video. And let me know down below what were your favorite books that you read in May or your least favorite books. Comment down below and we'll chat about it. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. If you're already subscribed, stay tuned for more content. Bookish Drummer Discord down below, where we're just got a ridiculous amount of buddy reads and read-alongs happening every damn month. Patreon link down below if you want to go support me there for as little as $1 a month. And my Amazon wishlist if you want to buy me a book. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a fantastic day.